Welcome to the podcast.
Attack for 20. We're on episode 5, and we're dedicating today's episode to Dromai. So I guess the title for our podcast episode is Winning with Dromai.
Michael, what did you do last week in Flesh and Blood?
Last week in Flesh and Blood, I recorded an episode with you talking
Yes.
about how to draft Icelander, and then we went to our local store to draft Icelander. And in fact, I think our episode was so good, there were 5 Icelanders in our 8-person pod.
Yeah,
You
before
were the 4th. I was
before
the
the
5th.
episode came out, they got the inside scoop.
We did not do well.
Oh, 5 Icelanders. I ended up going 2-1. It was
I don't know what happened to me. It was a disaster.
I think my Icelander deck, I had 7 non-attack action blues and only 2 additional blues after that point.
I think I actually had more. I think I had like 12. I don't remember how I died. But anyways,
Yeah.
well, we also over the weekend went to SCG Con Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
There on Saturday there was a road to Nats. It was CC. I got 9th. We were both top like 32. I think was the breakdown.
We all
for,
got
like,
top 16. You,
Oh, top
me,
16.
Youngji, we all got 2 spectral shields.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I got a spectral shield and a frostbite token.
Okay.
Cold
okay.
foil. So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was nice. Sunday it was sealed. We both top 8 of that, which was nice. We both lost to Isaac. Isaac just beat he beat Yuni, he beat you, he beat Yongji,
He beat
Dan.
yeah. He's just the New Jersey Slayer.
Yeah, seriously. I lost to him twice that weekend. I lost to him during CC, and then I lost to Aaron, who's also Canadian, and they're on the same team. I'm just like 0% into Canadians.
I think he's so funny. I was like walking by him in the hall and he was like it was right after we had registered our pools.
Yeah.
And we're like and we built our deck. So he's already finished building his deck. So I walked by him. I was like, "Hey Isaac, you get the juice?" And then he like looks around kind of like shifty and then like tells me to come over and then flips over a card like kind of secretively and it's a Crown of Providence. I'm like, what? I didn't expect that. Oh man, dude, that guy's so good, and he's pretty fun. He's funny, and fun to play with.
Yeah, pleasant.
You had another pack one pick one tweet.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I just wanted to mention that weekend was just a Fi weekend. Like I played CC.
Oh, yeah,
we played
yeah.
both of us played CC, Fi and CC, played Fi and sealed. I drafted Fi in the top 8.
Yes.
What was it? Battle Hardened draft. And then we did a team draft at night. It was 3-on-3, and our entire team drafted Faye, and then we also won that.
Dude, it's so gas. I think part of the reason why, and this is like maybe something we can talk about in the next episode when we're talking about drafting Fi, is that I think Fi does the best when the overall power level of everyone's decks is kind of lower.
Yeah. He needs the least to have the most.
Yeah. So I think in our team draft, it's so funny. So for people who are unfamiliar, team draft is usually like 3v3 format, and you sit next to the 2 people on your opposing team. And
You're passing to and receiving from someone who's not on your team.
yeah, so for people who are kind of like a little bit unfamiliar with like the dynamics of team draft, it's like very different from normal draft, where in normal draft you're kind of like incentivized to cooperate with your neighbors because then you guys will each have better decks as a result, and it's not as likely that you're going to play against each other. In team draft, like how good your neighbor's deck is like negatively impacts like your overall like success. And so the common tactic is the pass cut, where you pass your neighbor some really juicy cards and then you immediately cut them out of that hero.
You just need to hook them in long enough so that they've committed and they can't like pivot out, and then you just cut them. You drafted what? How many Icelander cards?
Okay, so I passed at Youngji like some like really juicy cards like blue Aether Hail, blue Aether Ice Vein, whatever. And then I started drafting Icelander cards like crazy. I ended up picking like 13 or 14 Icelander cards. I ended up having to play a Crack Bobble in my deck. And I played 3
Your
Phoenix
Fi
Ones.
deck.
Yeah, but I knew that this was gonna happen ahead of time, so I first picked a Phoenix form.
Genius.
I was like, if I'm gonna be in the Phoenix Flame train, then I'm gonna pick this card.
Yeah, just a testament to how Fi is good. Yeah, we did do a pack 1 pick 1 tweet number 2. I'm not going to talk about it. I did basically put like a dissertation of like a Twitter thread. I finally learned how to do those on my Twitter. So if you want to go check that out, it's Cards of M at Cards of M, and Yanji also has a Twitter at Yanji Lee. Yeah, we did a pack one pick one tweet. We've talked about why we think it's a little bit low effort, and that's why I wrote so much to talk about how it's more than just pack one pick one. It's pack one pick two, and it's this whole narrative that you start building for the guy you're passing to, and the narrative that you kind of are receiving. So yeah.
Yep.
And then the other thing we really wanted to talk about that's not necessarily Dromai related, but will help in our discussion is some new things that we learned about pack breakdowns. So the first thing is that like we've opened enough boxes now at this point and we started keeping track, but roughly 16 packs out of every 24, every booster box has about an extra, every 16 packs out of 24 has an extra Icelander common in the back.
There's 7 commons at the back. I think we had previously said in one of our earlier videos that the Icelander cards can be like any Icelander like playable card, but I believe now that they're intended to be wizard cards.
So the back 7 should be 3/2/2 of some sort, but it's like all the 3/2/2 is going to have the word illusionist, ninja, or wizard. So no pure ice cards basically in the back.
And it might happen like you've gotten some packs that were like kind of weird.
Yeah,
but it's very rare.
It's like rare. 1 pack in 4 cases might break the rules in some way. Like we saw a pack that only had 1 Dromai common in the back. It was 3/1/3. It happens, but that's like an anomaly. Like you shouldn't expect it to happen for purposes of draft. Also, I don't know if we mentioned this. I think we might have in the last episode, but in the first 3 cards, there's almost always 1 generic.
Yeah, it's that's piece of information is most useful when you can get past the pack and you see, and then there's like a draconic and an ice card in the pack. Then you know for sure that your person who's passing picked a generic.
Generic common, yeah. Cool. So that's what we want to talk about pack breakdowns.
Before we start talking about Dromai, I wanted to plug that I think our podcast, when this one is live, is gonna finally be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So I know a lot of people have been asking for that.
And I guess we'll put the links everywhere and it'll be great.
Yes.
All right. Drafting Dromai. How do you draft Dromai?
Carefully. Let's first talk about Dromai is the only hero that plays double face cards in Uprising.
Yep.
Some logistics behind how like the actual process of drafting the double face cards. This is something that if you don't currently do this at your store, maybe you should encourage people to do it. Just that at the beginning of every draft, everybody should just like get like one of the tokens and put it on top of their pile.
I actually recommend the double-sided tokens. Like, don't take a Crack Bobble, Phoenix Flame, or Checklist card because that card, from everyone else's perspective, looks like another card, and that could screw up the count.
Yeah,
I would take like a double-sided token and just like prepare to put all your cards under it.
Yeah, and everybody should like ideally best practice is just do that.
Like pack one, pick one. Even if you know in your heart you're never gonna draft Dromai, like I think it's just good practice.
Yeah, that's like a courtesy. LS has published it's like the end of like a rules reprise, and they're like, how do you draft double face cards? And they said carefully.
Like literally, it's a 1 line, 1 paragraph, carefully. Period. It's not an elegant solution, but it at least they said something. So yeah, just get your tokens ready to hide the dragons or hide the not dragons. It's just good practice. I will mention that for our top 8 draft at the Battle Hardened yesterday, the judge said that, look, if you accidentally show a double-sided dragon, either that you drafted one or you're passing one, it's not the end of the world. It's fine. There's no like infraction, but don't go out of your way to like broadcast to the table that you drafted that, Necria or whatever. Yeah. That's not cool. And obviously he didn't say this, but it's implied. Don't go looking around to see if other people drafted double-sided. That's just like, doesn't matter if you're double-sided or not. You're not really allowed to do that.
Their policy is actually their policy is actually a little bit confusing because they said that this is like the just like put the token over the cards is the standard practice at casual and competitive level events, and that professional level events the packs are going to be pre-opened. Yep. And they're going to replace the dragons with the checklist card, and then you go to the judge afterwards to get the cards.
Yep.
But I think for calling day 1, especially, there's going to be 2 callings that are coming up kind of soon that are mixed format draft and CC. Those drafts on day one of callings are supposed to be held at competitive rules enforcement level. However, drafts at callings are also usually called, and called meaning that you have a judge that's kind of keeping the pace for
Hmm.
when you're supposed to pick your cards and you're supposed to lay out all the cards and count. But if you if you lay out all the cards as a double face card, it's like
Oh yeah, that was so funny. That's another thing that a judge said. Someone was like, "Are we supposed to lay out the cards?" And the judge says, "Yes." But then he's like, "What if there's double sided?" And then he said, "If there's a double sided, don't lay it out." Wait,
yeah.
so
uh
there, whatever. I think it's like there's some tension there. It's I would hate to say that I think it does impact the way, you know, it does have an influence on like how Droma gets drafted
yeah.
in draft. Um, but I think the best thing you can try to do is just try to eliminate as much of that being a factor in your Dromai draft or not Dromai draft.
Yeah.
By just like be nonchalant. Just put have a token, put the cards under it. Don't go out of your way to like you know. I was doing this at first because I was like, how do you hide it? And like I like prep the token into the pack, I inject it in, and I slowly. And I was like, this is way too obvious. It's so clear. I just drafted a dragon. I think you just like nonchalantly put the dragon under your token, and, like don't do anything too special, and just like move on.
Yeah, yeah. And then now for actual gameplay related
Yeah,
advice.
yeah. Pros and cons about Dromai.
Okay, Dromai as a character is the Draconic Illusionist. Kind of similar to Prism. She has permanence. Prism has auras and Dromai has dragon allies.
She has
Uh,
one aura in the set, that majestic.
oh
Burn
yes,
them
yeah,
all.
yes. Dromai, similar to Icelander, and dissimilar to Phi, has a lot of block threes.
Yes.
Almost all of the Dromai attacks are block threes, and then all of the dragons are also block threes. In my opinion, out of all of the arms equipments, the Silken Form is the best one.
Yeah, and her phantasm attacks, so the Senopais, are like way above rate. They're like +2. The reds are like +2 more than like an easy comparison, just like Command and Conquer or any of the 2 for 6s. Like it's literally +2 more.
Yeah, like Brothers in Arms, you pay 2, you get 6 damage.
Mm-hmm.
Emerald Senpai, you pay 2, you get 8. Also, it blocks 3. Dunebreaker Senpai is maybe like one below or only one above like
Yep.
Dust Runner Outlaw, but it also blocks 3.
Yeah, it has like 2 stat points above like the Ninja 1 for 4 go again,
Yeah.
basically.
So like in general, it leads to like a more like flexible play style. I feel like a lot of the times when you're playing Fi, you're kind of pigeonholed into not blocking. And then Dromai, you can like pick your spots a little better. The game, you can like usually extend it out a little bit longer.
Yeah, you have a little bit more control.
Yeah, and then you mentioned that she has Arcane Barrier.
She can have a lot of arcane barrier or none, but like she's
Yeah.
the only one that has access to more than one.
Yeah. Most of the time, realistically, you only need about 3 to be very effective against Icelander. So effective that you could like feasibly fatigue her out. Those are the pros. Now, cons.
She doesn't have a real weapon. Like her weapon is really just like a paragraph.
What do you think having a weapon does in term like for your deck, and like what does not having a weapon kind of take away?
So having a weapon gives you typically inevitability.
Mm-hmm.
It also makes it so that if you have like just a nothing hand, you can still just pitch something to attack with your weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Those are like the main two.
Yeah, I view weapons kind of as being just like consistency.
Mhm.
So, for example, Phi has Searing Ember Blade, which is like a really good weapon. So, almost all of your hands, you can kind of think that you just have this card that like if you have a blue, then it's like attack for 3, go again, and generate a resource. Having a weapon just makes it so that all of your hands are like a lot more consistent. And kind of as like a result, like Dromai's hands in general are a little bit less consistent because they're relying on like the cards that you draw.
Like your draw my hands might not do anything.
Yeah.
It might do way too many things. But
Yeah.
now having a real weapon is a pretty big con.
Right. Kind of in that same line, a lot of her cards are synergy dependent. So I actually ran into this in the draft that we did yesterday. One of the issues that Dromai has is that a lot of her, or no, it's not an issue, but like one of her like requirements is that a lot of her cards require Ash in order to play them. So for example, you can't like play a Skittering Sands if you don't have an Ash. You can't play like an Invoke Dragon if you don't have an Ash. On the flip side, if all your cards just generate Ash, like if all you have are like Sweeping Blows or whatever, you're kind of going below rate because the game is valuing the Ash somewhere between 1 to 2 points. If you end the game with Ash on the field, you're kind of leaving points on the table.
And it's not like and Ash is not free. Like
No.
Sweeping Blow is kind of one of the better Ash generators, or
Yep.
it's literally like one of the only Ash generators.
Yep.
Besides actually pitching a red, but every time you pitch red, it's that same thing I talk about. You go to the liquor store, you buy a 6 pack of beer, and you just
You take
two
two
bottles out.
beers and then they give
Yeah.
you like a pack of gum.
No, you just take the 2
No,
beers
no,
and
the
you leave
ash.
the other
Yeah,
4
no, yeah,
beers.
yeah, but the ash is like the pack.
Oh
They
yeah.
just give you a pack of guys. Like, here you go.
Great. And so yeah, she has to make Ash. She's synergy dependent. You can have too few, you can have too many.
Yep.
She's also weak. You sometimes in the same way that Icelander sometimes just gets randomly like hosed by Dromai, like a random dragon.
Yeah.
You can get randomly hosed by a 6 power attack at an opportune time.
The most functional corollary is like Oasis Respite. Like you talked about it on the last episode. Like if you're playing Icelander and you're planning on like putting your opponent into the danger zone and then they just like Oasis Respite, your like entire turn just got wrecked.
Yeah, they're gonna like use the rest of the cards in their hand to like attack you, and you might just die.
Yep.
Um, for Dromai, it's a little bit different. It's in the sense that like you're gonna do other things that turn,
Yep.
most likely. In other words, you didn't block those cards, and if they just like opportunely pop your dragon, it's like really bad. Sometimes it's just bad if like that's the only action you were gonna do. You attack with like some dragon, and then they pop it because
Mhm.
that dragon was a dragon they would have had to attack on their own turn.
Yep.
And by popping it, they also effectively blocked it, so they kind of like won tempo in that sense.
Yeah. Either way, they're getting like a lot of value out of popping the dragon.
Yeah, like super loads of value. Like usually, like I think, like I think you can win through getting popped once on a dragon,
Yeah.
but like if it happens twice, it's almost like backbreaking. Like I don't know
Mhm.
if you can win.
And then Icelander can also similarly stop your turns, like when you're maybe taking a little bit extra damage because you have like a lot of things lined up, and then you attack with your dragon first, and then they just kill it with a arcane damage spell out of the arsenal.
Yeah, you have to be careful with Icelander, especially when you're attacking with Ash Wings, that your turn just doesn't end on the spot. Like you have to sequence properly.
Mm-hmm.
That one's not as devastating as the con as the 6 power.
Yeah, you can play around it a little bit better. And then so now we've gone through her basically what her character is, like the benefit, the pros and cons. Let's talk about it's written here as tier list, but I think it's maybe just like what the composition of your deck should be. Like what are the more important cards, less important cards.
Yeah, and this is important for both like draft and sealed.
Yep.
It's just cards you want to see if you want to actually play Dromai.
You wrote in the S tier. So we have S tier Necria, the red versions of the red Dunebreaker and Embermoss Centipies.
Yeah.
Red Rake the Embers. So let's talk
Yeah.
about like what S tier means to us. Yeah, I was gonna say, so our experience in card games previously is playing Magic the Gathering, and there might be other card games that are similar to Magic where when you rank like the best cards in those games can just like win the game by themselves.
Yeah.
And in general, in Flesh and Blood, it's really difficult to have a card that you can just like win the game by itself.
Yeah, most good Flesh and Blood cards are not winning the game by themselves, but they're giving you like a +1, 2, 3, maybe sometimes up to like +4.
Yeah.
Like advantage swing. Like this card normally should have only blocked 3 or attacked for 4, but it somehow is attacking for 5 or 6, or is blocking for 4 or 5.
And so when we put these cards in the S tier for Dromai, I think the message is not that like if you just like get these cards you're gonna win the game, but I think it's more so that if you don't have some of these cards, you just don't have a good deck. Like you're not playing to the advantages of Dromai.
So yeah, like Yanji mentioned, I think the most notable mentions, like the cards we're really happy to see to open in a seal pool, pack 2, pack 3, open them in our pack when we're already dedicated Dromai. Invoke Necria is she's kind of on her own tier. She's as close as it gets to like a single card that could win you the game.
Yep.
just because she has so much health and she really kind of smooths out the rest of your plays once you play her because she will generate usually at least one extra ash, often two,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes three. And then the Senopais, both Dunebreaker and Embermaw. That's a great question for you, Anji. Which of the two Senopais do you think is better in a pack one pick one situation?
I personally think Ember Moss Senpai is better because of the idea of opportunity costs, or what is it? It's like marginal. It's like marginal benefit or something. It's like whether or not there's other cards that fulfill like a similar kind of role.
Mm-hmm.
And so a Dunebreaker Senpai fulfills the role of being like a hyper efficient starter for your turns. But there's also a lot of other cards that can be turn starters.
Yeah.
But there's no card that can replace an Ember Mod, just like a 2 for 8. Like there's no other cards in the in the entire set that just like 2 for 8s.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny because like I feel like we're gonna talk about this a little bit more, but like red starters are like I literally when someone shows me their Dromai like limited deck, the first thing I do is just whiffle through and look for the red starters,
Yeah.
right? But I agree with you. Although it's gonna be really hard for me to take a Dunebreaker or sorry, an Embermaw over a Dunebreaker in a pack one pick one situation if they're both red.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that it's worth it that we mentioned that.
Yeah.
Just that there are cards that are very similar to Dunebreaker. They're not maybe less efficient.
And
Sometimes you just have to get in with the Ember Maw. I mean that card has won me like I've only played Dromai. I've played Dromai the least, but that card has like literally won me most of my games. Like I just I do some other things. I'm like distracting you with like a yellow sweeping blow,
yep.
and you're planning out your turn, and then I just come in with a big eight, and you're like, oh no, I blocked my home hand.
Yeah.
So
We put Red Rake the Embers on this like S tier list.
yeah,
Realistically, it's just like the first one is S tier. Having one in your deck is really good, and
yeah,
then when you have multiples, it's not as good. Mostly just because one of the requirements for playing that card is that you have to at least have one other Ash on the field, and you pitch a red to get
yeah,
like full value out of it.
yeah.
But part of the reason I think why we have it listed so highly is because it's also one of the only cards that by itself just like puts multiple permanents onto the board, which
Like
is
it's very hard for your opponent to get rid of all three dragons
yeah,
on their next turn. So you're more very likely to get effectively like by its base, if all three of them get to attack, it's a 1 for 6. If you make three Ash Wings,
yeah, and they kill
but
all of
often it's
them.
like a 1 for like 7 because at least one of those guys will stick around. Sometimes two of them.
Yep.
But it's just like the way the games play out. It's not likely. There's just tension between that and your invocations. Like you might only have rakes, and that's fine. You can have like 3 rakes maybe, but because the invocations also cost an ash, like something's got to give, right? Like you're paying either life, resources, cards to make ash,
Mm-hmm.
and so either you're tanking a lot of damage to do these plays, or your opponent's not really doing anything, or you just like don't have the ash to take full advantage of this card all the time.
Then we have one tier below that. We have the two red starters, the 1 for 3s, Sweeping Blow, which makes an Ash, and Billowing Mirage, which converts one of your Ash into an Ash Wing. Both of them attack for 3 in the red.
And cost 1.
Yep, they cost 1. We have Red Skittering Sands, which is a 0 cost turn starter. You need an Ash on the field, but it converts one of your Ash Wings into a 4 power Ash Wing
Yep.
for the
Yep.
turn. We have Red Dust Up, which is not a turn starter, but it's just like a 0 for 4, blocks 3, and has a relevant on hit trigger. Ember Moss Senpai, yellow, honestly, yellow and blue, I would put in this tier. And then we have the majority of the invocations also in this tier.
Yeah. I think we just think that. So I think like of all the cards you mentioned, I would take Kyloria over all of them.
Sure.
But like Kyloria, you can, if you guys are listening and you're like, that should be S tier, sure. It's just like really, really solid. We're just saying A tier because we think that Necria, the Red Ember Moss Senpai, and Dunebreakers and Red Rake are just like kind of on their own like stratosphere compared to these other cards.
Yeah, I actually have Kyloria. It's obviously really good, but I think Kyloria does have a weakness against Icelander, being like much worse than a lot of the other invocations against Icelander,
Yeah.
just because of
Yeah.
the two health.
Yeah. Yeah. It
So
could be a liability.
yeah, so it's not
No.
it's not a
Yeah.
card without weaknesses. It's definitely a very
Yeah.
strong
Yeah.
card.
Yeah, I think like the next three dragons after Necria is KYC, so it's Kyloria, Yendra, and Dromai. So then after that, Asvalai is really good in the mirror. It's just on rate. It's a zero cost three.
Yeah, zero cost
Um,
3. They have to do 3 to kill it.
yeah. Notably, Mirga and Uvia we have actually put on the B tier. So like we don't think like if you pass this and you're playing Dromai and you took like a red sweeping blow, red skittering, like something else over it, I don't think it's necessarily wrong.
Yeah. A lot of these are kind of like niche. They have like niche applications. So Mirror Guy and Uvia. Mirror Guy actually has like the most niche applications if like you know your opponent has like a bunch of poppers.
Yeah.
And Uvia is actually quite strong against Icelander.
Yep.
Icelander just doesn't really have a way to kill it unless she has a popper or she like attacks it with a popper.
But it could practically do nothing against a Fi.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like let's talk about again like what do these tiers mean? So I think for me these A tier cards, like I want these to be kind of like the bread and butter of my deck. Like I need at least I want to say like 5 or 6 copies of these like A tier cards so that I see them about like one in every hand so that like that this is like what I want to be like doing with my turn like
Yeah.
every turn in addition to the S tier cards. There's no like I don't think that there's like a secret like formula like I want 2 of these, 1 of these like
I think the honorary mention that I can talk about is like another A tier card is Flame Call Awakening. Um,
mm,
but besides that, like it's like if you need about a third of your deck to be S and A tier to like I think be successful.
yeah, that's actually a good transition. We can talk about. I call this the Phoenix Flame tier.
Yeah.
So actually, when the format first came out, I was of the opinion I was like, oh, Dromai just like doesn't want to play any Phoenix Flames.
Yeah.
And now that we've played the format a bit, I kind of like changed my opinion on it somewhat. I think that it's actually decent to have Phoenix Flames in your Dromai deck, but you need to be like deliberate about it's not like a Phi thing where it's like, oh, I'm just gonna put these Phoenix Flames in my deck.
Yeah.
It's like I am picking cards that have synergy with Phoenix Flame, and because of that, I can put like 1 or 2 Phoenix Flames into my deck.
And these are kind of like obvious. I think if you read the Draconic cards, but
Yeah.
Flame Call Awakening, of course, like we mentioned,
Yep.
Flameborn Retribution, which is literally just like Flame Call Awakening Junior.
Yeah, that one's actually originally I didn't think that card was very good, but being able to just like block with it for 2 and then pick up like a thing that you can like start your all your like dragons with
Yep.
is not bad.
Yeah.
If you just if your Phoenix Flame that you pick up attacks for 1, then it essentially like 3 points of value through a
Yep.
block.
Yep. And sometimes you pay a resource to just attack for 3 and do other things. Yeah, it's not it's just like you can make it worth a good card, and you're not completely dissatisfied if it ends up being the power level for yellow
Yeah.
when you attack with it.
Yeah. Stoke the flames, burn away. I think these types of cards you need like a critical mass. Like I would say at least like 3 or 4 of them to justify playing like 1 or 2 Phoenix Flames.
Yeah.
Like if I have like 2 Flame Call Awakenings and a Flameborn Retribution, I feel pretty good about playing like 1 or 2 Phoenix Flames.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like if I just had one, I'd still be okay playing a Phoenix Flame. Oh, red trans all the transmogrifies honestly
Yeah, yeah.
are kind of in this tier as well.
Yeah, Transmogrify is great with Phoenix Flame and kind of awkward without Phoenix Flame.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think for the purposes of draft, I want to mention this that even though these are not as good in Dromai as like the S or A tier cards, actually for the purposes of like the actual like process of drafting, I might pick these cards higher than like
Yeah.
the S or A tier cards just because you don't know that you're drafting Dromai at the beginning of the draft.
That's something that definitely has happened with me too. I thought Flameborn Retribution was just like unplayable,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been drafting a little bit earlier than I thought. Like I've taken it pick 1, pick 4,
Yep.
or pack 1, pick 4, and I didn't feel bad. Generics that are not so secretly Dromai cards. So there's Red Scar, which I don't expect you to see later than like pick 3.
Yeah, I think
know-
Tyler Horsful famously said that there's
It's the best common.
there's only one card now, one common that he would pick above it.
But Brothers in Arms common is the one he was referring to.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really good card for Dromai, especially like if you're blocking more. Sometimes you'll be like 1 or 2 points lower in life total. You can start your turn with it. It's 4 power. It's really strong.
Red Sift,
Yes.
Red Strategic Planning,
Yep.
red trade-in,
Yeah.
and to an extent, red Oasis Respite.
Yeah, you can
Uh,
actually start your turn playing Red Oasis Respite. Not ideal, but it's
yeah,
possible.
these are all just generics that are like, hey, like it's not embarrassing to play in Dromai. It does the job. Usually, you're only gonna get 2 Dromai commons, so if one of them isn't that good, or there's another Dromai drafter, like these are the cards you're gonna have to lean on the wheel,
Yep.
or just take them early. They're just not embarrassing to play, basically.
Yeah. On the ride back from our draft yesterday, one of our friends was asking like what the good majestics were in draft. And actually like most of the majestics in this draft format are not that good.
Some of them are actually just bad. Like Liquefy
Yeah.
is actually bad.
Yeah. But there are some M's that are pretty decent in Dromai. There's the 6 power ones.
Yeah, Thaw, Erase Face, those are just good overall.
Yeah. Uprising and Burn 'em All. These, I think, I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience playing these cards. I can see situations where they're very powerful on offense, but most of the time, to me, they're just like a red that blocks 3.
Yep. The red star that blocks it. I think Burn Them All is really nice. Like sometimes just like costing 0 can really smooth out your turn. Like you might not pitch anything that turn. Like you play Burn Them All, you play the Chromai, attack the Chromai, attack with like a couple Ash Wings. Like that's a solid turn.
Sure. I am not entirely sure where I stand on these legendary dragons, but you said that you thought that they were pretty good.
Okay, so the reason why I think they're solid is because I think that in the same way you get like auto losses against these like 6 attacks,
Yeah.
like you can just like auto win against like an Icelander with one of these legendary dragons. Like
Okay.
sometimes they just can't deal 4, 5, or 6. They
You
just
play
can't.
a Dracona Optimi against Iceland, they just can't like
Yeah,
can't do anything
if they
anymore.
can't kill it immediately on their next turn,
Yeah. Okay, that's
and you
fair.
get another turn with it,
That's fair. That's fair.
because like the most you can do at instant speed is 3. It's just because of the auto win potential against potentially like 2 to 3 players on your draft table. That's why I
Okay.
think they're really good, and they also block 3. All right, so I think we've talked about most of the cards. In general, you just want to see cards that are in the S and A tier that we mentioned. Like you need about like I think it's 10 if you add those 2 numbers. I think if you have 5 or 7, you can still win. If you have 12, 13, 14, like you're in a really good spot. You're likely the only Dromai drafter. Like I think we've opened a couple boxes, and I just set all the Dromai cards to the side, and I don't even know if like you can get like 12 of these in red. If you're counting the yellow and blue Ember Moss Enterprise, then you can get a little bit more, but it's just
Yeah.
like don't be too disappointed if you get like 5, 7.
Yeah, I think where ideally you want to be as Dromai, because she's a little bit more like synergy dependent. Your deck kind of has to come together a lot more. This is kind of why we said you really want to be like one of 2 Dromai drafters, and I think if you're one of 2, then you can get like pretty high number of the cards if you pick them early enough.
All right, gameplay. Can we
Oh,
move on to gameplay? Any other thoughts?
no, let's go to gameplay. So turn 0. This is actually quite an important topic. I think during Las Vegas Uprising pre-release, I was very excited about pitching my whole hand to Helios Miner, but as people have gotten better at playing the cards, I think that that is actually quite a risky play to make.
So turn 0 is all about Helios Miter. The obvious interaction is trying to make smash with
Yes.
Helios Miter. If you're going first, you're not going to take any damage for doing so.
Right.
So the goal is like, make. I think if you can make like 2 Ash Arsenal card, honestly, like a pretty solid first turn.
Yeah, that I would feel pretty good against most people if you can make an Ash and Arsenal card. If you can make an Ash and then summon an invocation, it's honestly like sometimes you just like run away.
Would you attack with that invocation?
No, what? No, maybe if it's Asvolai. If it's Asvolai and they don't have Arcane Barrier. No, they just Helios Miter. I would never attack with it.
Wait, what if it's Tumultai? How does that even work?
So
I guess that's not
pitch
possible.
no, it's possible. You pitch a red and a blue to Helios Miter,
Oh,
and
and
then
then
you
you
pitch
pitch a
another
blue.
blue. Okay. I would attack with Tomultai. I would attack with Tomultai.
Only if they have actual equipment.
Yeah, blow up your Heat Wave or your Sasha Sandikai. That would feel great. Just start the
Okay.
game. Okay, that's the only one. That's like quite a contrived situation.
But yeah, so if you go first, use the Helios Miter to make some match. You're home free. Like there's not much decision making. Try to Arsenal card,
Yeah.
obviously. If you go second, you got this like a risky game, you know?
Yes.
If your opponent just says, I'm just gonna pass priority, you gotta kind of make a judgment call. I would highly recommend just okay, yeah, go back to your turn. Now, great, you didn't take any damage on your first turn. You still have your Helios Miter. You didn't make any ash, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see some situations where you look at your hand and your hand is just awful. Like you cannot do anything with this hand anyway. Then I potentially would risk it for the biscuit, especially if you're against a Phi and you're just like, hey, I'll activate Helios Miter, target your weapon. Ideally, it's like a red and like a blue pitch.
Yeah, I
Just like
won.
make one ash.
Yeah, I wonder because like one of the situations came up yesterday when I was playing against you. I had like all red hand that was like not super functional,
Yeah.
and you just like passed turn against me. I wonder maybe would it have been better to just make 2 ash and then just take some damage.
Yeah.
That's like
But my
a
hand was nuts.
yeah.
I had like the quintessential 17 damage, like red head jab, red soaring strike, blue.
Yeah.
So like I was trying to bait you into it. So I think it would have been
Yeah.
worse for you, to be honest.
Did not get baited.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So actually, before we go
oh
too
yeah.
far, I feel like we made some assumptions about the turn zero play, and I kind of just want to like dumb it down a little for those who are a little confused about what we're talking about. Some of you guys know exactly what we're talking about, but Helios Miter is the token headpiece that you just get
Oh
to
yes.
start with.
Yes.
It has one ability and it costs 2 resources. It's instant, so notably not once per instant. You can activate it multiple times. Prevent 1 damage from target like source of your choosing, basically.
Yeah, to target hero.
Yeah, to target hero, which is you. And so what we're saying is like a very classic play for Dromai going first is you just activate Helios Miter. You can target anything. A good practice is just like target your opponent's weapon, even if it's a Storm of Sandikai, even if it's a Waning Moon, and you make 2 ash and you arsenal card, and then you destroy your Helios Miter. The reason why we do this is because it's very, very rare that you're going to get value from Helios Miter otherwise.
Yep.
So it's like a fine play. And because like being able to sort of ash just means you don't have to do the old buy a 6-pack and leave the 4 beers at the shop later. Like you're doing it now, getting out of the way.
You're just getting 2 free beers to go.
Yeah, this time you're just going to the shop, you just take 2 beers and you leave. But the reason why we say going second when you're going second, it's a little scary to do that in your opponent's turn. Is if they have 4 cards that just deal a lot of damage, it can really punish you. Like you actually are taking damage. This is like you go to the beer shop, you grab 2 beers, and he like slaps you in the face and gives you a punch in the stomach. You know, like
You're
it's
paying,
like a risky.
you're paying for those beers one way or the other.
Yeah. So hopefully that makes sense. Please let us know if that didn't make sense in like comments or feedback.
Yeah. And then so Dromai is a little bit different from the other heroes in that Phi and Icelander, I think once you kind of figure out like the flow of their gameplay, you're kind of trying to like churn the engine. You're like I don't think that's a real saying. You're just trying to like you're trying to just like keep going, like doing the same kind of like flow every turn. But Dromai, I think, actually has like 2 distinct phases of the game. Where the first phase of the game, you're trying to like build up a board, and then after that, you're trying to just like utilize that board, the advantage that that board has given you to kind of close the game out. And so I think at the very beginning of the game, and this is kind of what we touched upon when you're going first, where Michael said you just want to make 2 ash and maybe set a card. Like you're making those ash so that you can set up a turn where you either play like a red rake and some other stuff, or you play like 2 invocations if you have them, or you play an invocation plus a billowing mirage, just as a way that you can put multiple permanents onto the board. After you have the reason why it's important to put multiple permanents on the board as opposed to just like making like 1 ash swing and then just like attacking as normal is that a bulk of like the extra value that you get on your hero really comes from being able to attack with your permanent with your ally a second time and your opponent is intending to kill it. So for example, if you are attacking with a Themai, it has 3 power, 4 health, and you attack with it and then they kill it, and you let's say spent like 2 resources and an ash, you're getting about like 7 points of value from it, which is like similar to a I don't know, like a Findle's Fighting Spirit or like or like a Raging Onslaught from WTR, if that makes more sense. It's just like you pay 3, you get 7 points out of it. It's like about on par. But the moment that you attack with it a second time and it's attacked for 6, and then your opponent wants to attack it, then you're kind of just like you're way in the money, so to
Yeah, we
speak.
call that value town.
Yeah, you're in value town.
Yeah, and I think like to make it really simple, like the simplistic math, we think that the game values like Ash. Honestly, just feels like it values it like at least a 1,
Yep.
like 1 point of damage. Like Junebreaker Senpai is a 1 for 5, but if they pop it, you can make an Ash. So in my head, it's like I think the game thinks like sometimes you get an Ash from it, so it's like really a 1 for 4 of Go Again that makes an Ash.
Yeah.
And then compared to Sweeping Blow, which is a 1 for 3, that just straight up makes an Ash. Like I look at that and I look at Dunebreaker, and to me, like an Ash almost is worth more than 1. At least the game has made it that way.
It,
And then
it
to
costs
act-
more than 1, but like
Yeah, sorry, it costs more than 1 health. Yeah, and then well, okay, the other card that I look at is Billowing Mirage, which is the same.
Yep.
So I think like to make an Ashwing, both cost more than 1. So to make an Ashwing from nothing costs like almost 3, like over 2, like 2.5 ish. And I'm just saying like numbers, like this could be resources, this could be life. Just like we're just trying to arbitrarily value how much an Ashwing is.
yeah.
An Ashwing by itself, if it attacks for 1 and then absorbs 1 damage, is only 2.
Yep.
You need to get that second attack in. But what Yanji is basically saying is the moment you get that second attack in, assuming you value that Ash at like 2.5,
Mhm.
you're in the money. Because
Yeah.
now you got 2 points of damage and you still have 1 point of extra health on it.
And there's multiple ways for you to like get value out of it. So for example, and this is part of the reason why I like Red Rake the Embers so much, is when you make 3 Ashwings, let's say you're playing against Fi, they might
Yeah.
only have access to like 1 Phoenix Flame on their turn. So in
Yeah.
order for them to like attack your second Ashwing, maybe they attack with it with like a yellow like head jab. So they gave up 2 points to
Yep.
attack it.
Yep.
If they don't give up 2 points to attack with it, and then you can attack with it twice. You know what I mean? Like either way, like that second Ashwing is doing 3. So the first Ashwing is 2, and then the second Ashwing is 3.
Yeah.
And maybe the
yeah.
third one is 4. Like it just like they compound. The more permanents that you can put on the board in one turn, the
Yep.
more value they kind of compound.
Yeah, yeah. It's just higher likely. You're just like throwing, shit on the wall and see how much of it sticks. But if it does stick, you're in the money.
Yeah, and then after the first part of the game where you're trying to like scrounge together a board, one of the reasons why Dromai I think usually has a kind of healthier life buffer is because of these permanents. So when your
Mhm.
opponent is trying to deal with the permanents, they're not attacking you, so you have the ability to later on in the game take like a bigger hit. And I frequently find myself in the position where it's like, okay, sure, like I put out some stuff at the beginning of the game, then they spend some of their cards trying to attack it. I maybe, if I was like a 5 mirror, I'd be at like, I don't know, 8. But because I'm playing Dromai now, I'm at like 11 or 12. And since I can now take like a full hit from you, I can now come back at you with this like crazy turn where I go like, I play like a 1 for 3 start, and then I play a Blaze Headlong, and then I end with like a 2 for 8. It's just like I can craft this like better hand utilizing the arsenal a little bit better than some of the other classes can.
Yeah, I won't forget this that first time that we did that draft at Vegas.
Yeah.
You like went Skittering Sands red into a 1 for 5 Dunebreaker Senpai,
Yeah.
and then you came into a flex and you paid the extra resources because you started for blue.
Oh yeah.
And I was just like, what? I was like, you just 15 me.
Yeah. That's
Uh,
quite a strong turn.
yeah, so like, yeah, like exactly what Yanji's saying. The second half of the game, you're coming in with those Ember Moss Senpais, which is why I think he also prefers like the blue and the yellow, because those are cards you pitched on the first rotation.
Yep.
And I think Dromai is actually kind of interesting in that sense. Like if you're a Guardian player, Dromai actually might be something that you enjoy playing because you often will get to the second cycle against like anyone. Actually, especially in the Dromai Mirror. The Dromai Mirror is like actually one of the most grindiest like grind fests ever.
Yeah, that one is
Uh,
it's like a game of chicken. You're like trying not to play like not trying not to be the first person to put some
play the
Ashwings
raid.
on the board, because then like they put their Ashwings on the board and they kill all your Ashwings, and now you're like, oh, how am I gonna deal with their Ashwings?
I don't know if it's like correct because and this is because I really just haven't had enough Dromai games. But I often find I'm just like gonna jam like 32, 33. I'll put an extra couple of cards in a Dromai mirror
Mm-hmm.
because every single Dromai mirror I've played has just gone down to the wire.
Yeah.
Like each player only has 2 or 3 cards. We both have an Arsenal sand cover that just it's just like the way it works out is because like we're the priority is to destroy dragons because neither player has a weapon. So the moment we get to an end state where you cannot kill
Yeah.
the other person's dragons, you're dead. They have one dragon. It's just a Kodachi that just attacks you forever, and then you just die. What's that phrase? Like you're dead. You're just dead because inevitability or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Having said all this, it's a good time I think to talk from the other heroes' perspectives, because Dromai's kind of trying to like drag this game out. If you're playing like other heroes against Dromai, you really don't want to put cards in your deck that kind of take your foot off the gas pedal. So
Yeah.
cards like Sigil of Protection, Oasis Respite, Healing Balm, these are cards that are in the other matchups are like really reasonable cards to play.
Mhm.
I think you really do not want to play these cards against Dromai. As a Dromai player, it's like really benefit. Like if your opponent is like, "Oh, I just gained 3 life," you're like, oh, "Great."
Yeah, that's so much better than attacking for 3 and try to make the game shorter.
Yeah.
This is actually it's great. It's not even in our notes, so this is really nice that you brought this up because I was thinking the same thing when we were talking about Icelander.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is just like bonus Icelander content, but I feel like as Icelander, I actually want to shorten the game.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
I don't want the
I
game to
agree.
drag on.
Yeah, it's
Um,
because like I think yeah the best like thing that you have access to with Icelander is that you just get that like extra turn, and so the
yeah,
extra turn means less the more turns there are.
yeah. So if you're playing against Romai, take out the cards that are like more defensive cards. What I often do is if I have rebellious rushes as a Fi, I actually will board them in against Dromai.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll take out like if I have a red healing bomb that it's actually not taking it out. Like the way I actually build these draft decks, all my draft decks typically I only have 27, 28 quote unquote main board, and I have 2 to 3 floating cards that I go in and out for every single matchup.
Yeah.
Like against the mirror, I'm gonna try to keep as many block threes. Like I'll play like it's actually yesterday was a great example of this. Yesterday's draft, I was drafting Fi. I was the second Fi in a 10-person pod, so I actually had enough cards to do this.
Yep.
But I had 2 Lava Vein Loyalty yellows that I only played in the mirror, and I
Yep.
sided them out against Icelander for 2 Healing Balm reds, which is
Mm-hmm.
really juice. And then against Dromai, one of those became a yellow Rebellious Rush, and the other one was a red Rebellious Rush, I think.
Yeah.
But like conceptually, that's what I'm trying to get at. Is just like you want always go again. You never want to brick. I think if you brick against Dromai, you potentially just lose.
Yeah, illusionist. I think that's kind of like the niche that LSS is making for the illusionist class. Where I think on face value they have like some things that they're like a little bit higher undercosted, but then have like a lot of weaknesses to getting blown out by 6 power attacks. But if you stumble against illusionist, you're just like falling behind so much. The last thing for gameplay, I guess, like we can do like kind of like a summary as to what your Dromai deck should kind of look like.
Yeah, and I think at minimum, you should have about 4 to 5 red starters. So these are just like I call a red trade in. That's a red star. You
Sure.
can make that a red starter.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just so that you can actually take advantage of what we think Dromai's main advantage is, which is being able to tackle dragons twice. Like the first attack on a dragon is not her main value. It's being able to threaten like infinite dragon attacks.
Yep.
The second, the third, the fourth. And the only way to really take advantage of that is by having a red starter. Now, I'm just going to put a disclaimer. I have seen some successful Dromai decks that kind of do a more block out strategy. They have some dust ups. They block, only attack with 1 dragon. And that's like their entire action. They blocked with like 4 cards, or they blocked with 3 the arsenal card.
Yeah.
That's possible too. And that's often the result of not having any red starters.
Yeah.
But
I think if you're the opponent and you identify that your opponent's that your Dromai opponent's trying to do that,
you have to
you
attack the dragon.
you really want to attack the dragon.
In general, you should be attacking the dragons until like you can calculate the damage and you're just like they're just dead or they're at 1
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're fine. So that's a composition, like kind of like a minimum, like a checkbox. I think the second checkbox is you want a really good, healthy amount of reds.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting with Dromai. You want a good healthy amount of reds, but also like potentially a good amount of blues that you can side in against Iyslander to really make that like your game to like lose. Because if you can present like 12 blues against Iyslander and you have like one or two rakes, like you can really craft game states where you just fatigue the
Yeah,
Iyslander.
if you have like yeah, if you especially like even like stuff like Yellow Rake,
Yep.
it's like a
Yep.
battle of like Singes versus Rakes.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And so if you end up having Arcane Barrier like 3 and you have, like Michael said, around 12 blues, it's really hard for Iyslander to do any damage to you. And so I think that your deck could operate against Fi and Dromai on as little as like 6 blues. It really depends on the composition of your cards. I think the more like Ember Moss Centipies that you have, like things that you really want to spend like 2 resources on, like Necreas, etc.
Yeah. Dragons that cost 2 or 3.
Yeah,
Dromai.
it's quite reasonable to run up to like I think 8 or 9 blues. But it really depends. If your deck is more focused on Ash and like playing like Rakes and stuff, then maybe you only need like 6.
And we talked about this, but I think we'll mention it again. The S and A tier cards that we talked about.
Oh,
Like a good critical mass. I think would you say 10 is probably like a good like number?
see,
Like just like count.
I don't know. I want like half my deck to be these cards. No, I think it really depends on like how you like you fill your deck out. I think a good deck, maybe you play like yeah like 10 of the S and A tier cards, and then you fill out with like some of like the Phoenix Flame tier cards. Maybe you play like a couple of like yellows or whatever that block well. I think actually this is like my little pet card. I think yellow dust up is actually really nice. Just because it pitches for 2, which is kind of relevant. Sometimes like you just on your turn you just want to like play an Ember Moss and a Pie. But then also in the mirror, being able to like dust up one of their dragons is actually really powerful. And then against Iyslander, I think yellows are just better than reds. I think like 10. I wrote in the show notes 12. You wrote 5 to 7
I just feel
SNA
like
tier cards. I think you're just in. I think you're just in. You're just not in like good like Dromai seats. I think if you're in a good Dromai seat, if you're at a table where you're like the first or the second Dromai, there's only one, there's only 2, then it shouldn't be too hard, especially if you prioritize the S and A tier cards that we mentioned, the Centipires, the Rake, the powerful invocations, and also the red like 1 for 3 go again attacks. I don't think it's that unreasonable since each box that you open should have between like 1 or 2 of every
yeah,
common,
yeah.
sometimes up to like 3.
I think this is literally because like in sealed, that's roughly how many I get.
Yeah.
And I'm like not losing games, like I still can win.
Yeah.
But like and I think this is like a general known draft. I'm not sure, and I would love to hear like viewers, I mean listeners, like if you have similar experiences. But I feel like Dromai is so overdrafted. Like kind of at the armory, like like your friendly like tier 1 events. Like
Yeah.
I can't like I'll see a Dromai card missing, like a common missing in like pack 1 pick 2, and then like pack 1 pick 5 there's like no Dromai cards left. I'm like, what? Why? And I find
Unless
myself in the little Phi engagement again. Like I want to draft Dromai. I took a red Ember Moss and a pie. Like
unless you're in
it is
the
just,
what's it called? Unless you're in
oh, the 5
the
Iyslander
5
table.
Iyslander table.
We said these numbers like 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. I really think that like there's 9 of quality cards support more than like 2 Dromai drafters, but there's always 2, sometimes 3.
Yeah,
Like guaranteed.
I've moved up. I think it is possible, especially when you value the Draconic cards a little bit more.
Sure.
It is possible to support 3 like decent-ish Dromai decks, but those Dromai
Yeah.
decks like need to, I think, get like a little bit lucky to, like if you have, if you end up having sitting at a table, let's say where the most powerful deck is like a solo Iyslander, and you are one of 3 Dromais, and all the 5 decks are kind of diluted, I think that you still have an okay shot at winning.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense because you have a good matchup against the solo Iyslander
Yeah.
potentially.
Mhm.
Yeah, great. I think that's all we got.
Like I said, the podcast is now available on Apple and Spotify. So if you're listening to this via Podbean or YouTube, I'll include links in the YouTube description, but I also like post it on like social media. On Podbean, there should just be links to Apple and Spotify.
I hope you guys are able to draft Dromai carefully for your RTNs. Um, next week, I agree with you, Yandi. Let's talk about Fi. I think
Yeah,
there's some stuff that's worth talking about. The gameplay's a little bit simpler, but there's a lot of nuance and niche stuff that I think it will be a value add for you guys.
we're gonna actually be traveling to Europe, so maybe it'll be a shorter one, or maybe not.
No, I think we'll just
Maybe
get
it'll
it
be
out.
maybe it'll be
Yeah,
lengthy.
yeah, yeah.
All right, catch you guys on the next one.